The marble floors of the Manhattan family court echoed with a haunting finality. As Emma Thompson sat across from the man who had systematically destroyed her soul, over 8 years of marriage, that signature smirk spreading across his face, like he'd just won the Super Bowl, drummed against the mahogany table in a rhythm that screamed victory. The sound was deliberate, calculated. Just like everything else about Ryan, he wanted her to know he was in control, wanted her to feel small. Ryan Mitchell leaned back in his custom Italian leather chair, his $3,000 Armani suit tailored to perfection. "I'm free from your dead weight," his fingers, adorned with a Rolex Submariner that cost more than most people's cars. "Finally," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction as he lifted his Mont Blanc pen like a weapon. Fell into an uncomfortable silence that seemed to stretch for eternity. "I need to take you back to where this incredible story began." Judge Patricia Williams, a distinguished woman in her 60s, with silver hair and penetrating eyes that had seen every kind of human drama, cleared her throat. She was working as a junior marketing coordinator at a small advertising agency, but her real passion burned in the sketches she drew every night. In her tiny studio apartment, his blue eyes sparkling with what she thought was sincerity. "I just need someone who believes in me. Someone who understands that great men need great women beside them." He had that dangerous combination of old money confidence and new money ambition that made everyone in the room gravitate toward him, like moths to a flame. A sustainable fashion line that would revolutionize how Americans thought about ethical clothing. She had business plans, prototype designs, even a small inheritance from her grandmother that could fund her startup. Fashion design wasn't just her dream. It was her calling. Her art, her everything. Subtle changes began. Ryan started making small comments about her appearance. "Maybe you should try a different lipstick, Emma. The wives in my circle have a certain standard." He'd suggest she change her clothes before important events. "That dress is fine for lunch with your friends. But tonight we're dining with the Ashfords." The sound cut through the tension like a gunshot. The words sliced through the air like a blade. Charming. Everything she'd dreamed of in a husband. He'd bring her flowers, take her to exclusive restaurants, introduce her to his wealthy friends as my brilliant wife. Emma felt like she was living in a fairy tale. Emma's hands weren't trembling from fear. They were steady with the quiet power of a woman who knew something that would destroy the man sitting across from her. If you love revenge stories, smash subscribe and hit that bell. When he talked about building an empire together, when he promised her that his success would become their success, Emma made a decision that would haunt her for the next 8 years. Already hooked. Drop a like because what's coming next is insane. The oak-paneled courtroom, with its towering windows and portraits of stern judges. There are some financial disclosures that require immediate attention. What he was about to discover would shatter not just his arrogance, but his entire understanding of the woman he'd spent nearly a decade slowly destroying. Emma wasn't walking out of this courthouse, broken and begging for scraps. She was about to reveal that she was worth more money than Ryan had ever seen in his entire life. Before we proceed with the final dissolution, Mr. Mitchell. Ryan's confident smile began to crack. It's like ice under pressure. But to understand the magnitude of what's about to happen. Emma was just 23 when she first met Ryan at a charity gala in the Hamptons. Ryan was 28, tall, devastatingly handsome. An heir to a real estate empire worth $50 million. "I'm going to revolutionize commercial real estate," he told her over champagne at the Plaza Hotel. Emma's heart soared. Here was this incredible man, this titan of industry. And he was choosing her. She had her own dreams. But when Ryan looked at her with those piercing eyes, she folded up her fashion sketches, deposited her grandmother's inheritance into their joint account, and became Mrs. Ryan Mitchell. The first year was magical. Ryan was attentive. But fairy tales have a way of revealing themselves as nightmares. By their second year of marriage, Emma told herself he was just helping her fit into his world. She started shopping at the boutiques his friends' wives frequented, spending thousands on clothes that felt like costumes. She began straightening her naturally curly hair. I guess Ryan mentioned he preferred it more polished. By year 3, Ryan had convinced Emma to quit her job. "A Mitchell wife doesn't work," he said. his tone leaving no room for argument. "Your job is to support me, to be the perfect hostess, to make our home a sanctuary where I can focus on building our empire." Emma agreed. Believing that supporting her husband's dreams was the noble thing to do, she threw herself into the role with desperate enthusiasm. Planning elaborate dinner parties, managing their social calendar, and slowly watching her own identity disappear. The dinner parties were Emma's specialty. She'd spend days planning menus, coordinating with caterers. What she wanted was to be seen as more than just Ryan's pretty wife. During one of their legendary dinner parties, Emma had spent 3 days preparing, hiring a chef from La Bernardine, arranging orchids flown in from Thailand, selecting wines that cost more than most people's monthly salary. When she heard Ryan's voice carrying from the dining room, he was telling a story, his voice animated with alcohol and male bonding. What she wanted was to feel like herself again, but let's be honest. Emma was just a phase, a very expensive, very well-decorated phase, but a phase nonetheless. I keep her around because she's useful. She didn't throw the carefully prepared dessert plates against the wall. Instead, she set them down with steady hands, walked upstairs to the bedroom that had never felt like home, and opened a laptop that had been collecting dust in her closet for 5 years. Not because she's indispensable. Vibrant colors, bold designs, concepts that merged sustainability with luxury in ways the industry had never seen. Her past self looked back at her, untouched by compromise, unbroken by years of being told she wasn't enough. Can you imagine spending years of your life making someone else's dreams come true, while your own dreams collect dust? Emma didn't sleep, just something small. To keep me occupied. But the dangerous smile of a woman who had just remembered her own power. She was importing organic cotton from Peru, working with artisans in Guatemala, developing revolutionary new fabrics that were both luxurious and completely sustainable. During the day, she continued playing the role of the perfect wife, attending charity luncheons, hosting dinner parties, managing their social calendar with flawless precision. Blouses, and accessories that looked like they belonged in the pages of Vogue, but were manufactured with zero environmental impact. Aurora's online sales exploded. People stuck in quarantine were reevaluating their values, their consumption habits, their relationship with fashion. Emma's timing was perfect. She priced them accessibly, marketed them through Instagram influencers who cared about sustainability, and watched as orders began trickling in. But every night, after Ryan fell asleep in their king-size bed, he was too busy building his real estate empire, focused on his own success, to pay attention to what his wife was doing with her spare time. Other women who were brilliant but underestimated, who understood what it meant to be overlooked and undervalued. Believing his wife was safely contained in their golden cage, he was too busy complaining about pandemic restrictions affecting his construction projects. Too focused on his own problems to realize that his wife was building something extraordinary. Emma was quietly building relationships with eco-conscious manufacturers in Italy, sustainable fabric producers in Japan, and ethical jewelry designers in Denmark. Emma would slip into the spare bedroom and work on building something that would change everything. Emma would casually mention her interest in sustainable fashion. She'd ask innocent questions about manufacturing, about retail, about e-commerce. The wives of Ryan's business associates, poured in their own gilded prisons, became inadvertent consultants. She researched, a nod to the dawn of a new era, began building what would become the most revolutionary luxury sustainable fashion brand in American history. She planned, she remembered who she used to be, before she became Ryan's very expensive, very well-decorated phase. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Let me know, because this story is about to get so much more intense. This feminist lawyer started lecturing me about women in business, about how I should value my wife's intelligence. Emma froze, her hands gripping the marble countertop, arranging flowers, making sure every detail was perfect. Ryan's business associates would praise her skill, calling her the perfect hostess, and Ryan's secret weapon, refilling glasses, ensuring appetizers were always available, playing the perfect hostess role she'd perfected over 5 years of marriage. But as Ryan's success grew, as his real estate developments began dominating Manhattan's skyline, as his net worth climbed into the hundreds of millions, Emma wasn't allowed to have opinions about Ryan's work, wasn't invited to strategy meetings, wasn't even permitted to answer the phone when business calls came in. Wearing a $2,000 dress, surrounded by the evidence of her domestic perfection, felt herself disappearing completely. You have unlimited shopping, a beautiful home, successful husband. What more could you want? She was decorative, functional, but never essential. Emma's role in his life became smaller and smaller. At cocktail parties in the Hamptons, Ryan would walk 10 feet ahead of her, leaving her to trail behind like an accessory. When business associates asked about her background, Ryan would wave dismissively and say, "Emma handles the domestic side of things. She's not really involved in the business." The phrase "domestic side of things" became a prison. "You're lucky, Emma," Ryan would tell her, during their increasingly frequent fights. Most women would kill for your life. What she wanted was to matter. The breaking point came on a humid August evening. I need to pause here for a second, because I'm getting so invested in Emma's story. 24 of Ryan's most important business contacts were gathered in their penthouse dining room, overlooking Central Park. Emma moved through the room like a ghost. She was standing in the kitchen, arranging the final course on platinum-rimmed plates. "The funniest thing happened at the Palmer deal closing," Ryan was saying. His words slightly slurred from the $500 bottle of wine they'd opened. Laughter rippled through the room. "I told her, lady, my wife is beautiful. She's charming. She throws incredible parties." The explosion of male laughter that followed hit Emma like a physical blow. She stood in her own kitchen. But Emma didn't scream. She didn't storm into that dining room and demand an explanation. There, in a folder labeled "Before," were her old-fashioned sketches. That night, and for the first time in 5 years, Emma smiled. Not the practiced smile of a perfect hostess. For the next 2.5 years, Emma lived a double life that would make any CIA operative proud. She didn't use her married name. Instead, she created Aurora Sustainable Fashion. The irony was delicious. While Ryan slept peacefully, she used her hostess skills to her advantage. At every charity event, every dinner party, every social gathering. "I'm thinking about starting a little hobby business," Emma would say over lunch at the country club. What they didn't know is that Emma's little hobby was becoming a sophisticated operation. The first Aurora collection launched quietly online. In October 2019, Emma had created 12 pieces. Ryan never noticed. By Christmas 2019, Aurora had generated $50,000 in revenue. Emma reinvested every penny. By summer 2020, with everyone trapped at home during the pandemic, the brand that had started as a little hobby was suddenly generating $100,000 per month. Emma hired her first employees. Ryan still didn't notice. By 2021, Aurora Sustainable Fashion had caught the attention of major retailers. Nordstrom placed a massive order. Saks Fifth Avenue wanted an exclusive collection. She did it all under her maiden name, Emma Thompson.
Emma.
Really knows how to make a home feel welcoming.
Oh.
While continuing to play the role of Ryan's perfect wife, sustainable fashion bloggers were calling Aurora the future of luxury. Then spend the night responding to emails from Vogue editors who wanted to feature her designs. Emma was invited to speak at sustainability conferences, to appear on podcasts about women entrepreneurs, to write articles for business magazines about ethical fashion. The cognitive dissonance was surreal. Emma would host dinner parties where Ryan's friends praised her domestic skills. "You must be the wife. You're so lucky to have such a talented hostess," business associates would tell Ryan. Mitchell, not Ryan's wife, just the wife. Her voice carrying the confidence of someone who knew secrets. "He didn't mention you were coming." Her voice steady, despite the earthquake happening in her chest. "Actually, he told me you were his sister, who helps with domestic arrangements." Ryan's so excited to finally have a family. Like she was an interchangeable part in Ryan's well-orchestrated life. Down the elevator, onto the busy Manhattan street where life continued normally, while hers fell apart. "And I need the best attorney in New York." Emma had hired a team of 15 people, opened a showroom in the garment district, and was being courted by major investors who wanted to fund her expansion. What they didn't know is that the woman serving them appetizers had just signed a $2 million wholesale deal with Bloomingdale's, the most feared divorce attorney in New York, a woman who specialized in representing underestimated wives of wealthy men. Ryan strutted into the courthouse wearing his lucky Tom Ford suit, his confidence somewhat shaken but still intact. He'd convinced himself that Emma's business was probably inflated, that the $47 million valuation was an exaggeration. You have no skills, no experience, no money of your own. You'll come crawling back within 6 months. It's begging me to take you back. I don't care if she has some little online shop. I'm still worth more than she could ever be. Instead, she looked tired, perhaps, but there was something in her dark eyes that should have made Ryan nervous. She adjusted her glasses, shuffled through her papers, began reading through the standard divorce proceedings. She looked at Emma with something that might have been respect, then continued reading. Your financial disclosure shows assets of approximately $127 million, including your real estate holdings, investments, and business valuations. According to these documents, you're the sole owner and founder of Aurora Sustainable Fashion. She found his assistant, Jessica, sitting at his desk, her hand resting protectively on a visible baby bump. The kind of symptoms that made her wonder if the stress of living a double life was finally catching up with her. He planned to drag out the proceedings, to make them so expensive and complicated that Emma would give up and accept whatever scraps he offered. Even the court reporter looked up from her machine in shock. It was something she used to do in the early days of their marriage, back when he still pretended to value her presence. Ryan looked up, mildly curious but not concerned. He was expecting Emma to declare maybe her car, some jewelry, perhaps a small savings account. Instead, she walked to her Aurora showroom, stood in front of the mirrors where models tried on her designs, and made a decision that would change everything. She'd made reservations at his favorite restaurant. Imagined maybe they could reconnect. Maybe she could find a way to tell him about Aurora. She handed it to her attorney, who passed it to the judge with barely concealed satisfaction. By early 2022, Aurora was generating $500,000 per month in revenue. But because she was inconveniencing him, the final betrayal came on a Tuesday in March 2022. Emma had been feeling unwell for weeks, exhaustion, nausea. She decided to surprise Ryan with lunch at his office in Midtown. But when Emma arrived at Mitchell Development's gleaming offices, Ryan wasn't there. Oh, Jessica said, looking up with surprise that quickly morphed into something that might have been pity. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Not Mrs. Ryan's in a meeting, Jessica continued. Emma's world tilted. Sister. He'd told his pregnant mistress that his wife was his sister. How far along are you? Emma asked. Shh. Jessica's hand moved to her belly with obvious affection. 6 months. We're having a boy. Finally, have a family. The words echoed in Emma's mind as she walked out of that office. Emma didn't go home. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized, but never used. This is Emma Thompson, she said, her voice steady as steel. I need to file for divorce immediately. When Emma filed for divorce, Ryan's reaction was exactly what she'd expected. He was furious, not because he was losing her. You're making a huge mistake, he told her during one of their last conversations. You'll never survive without me. Ryan hired the most expensive divorce attorney in Manhattan, convinced that Emma would be represented by some bottom-tier lawyer who'd be intimidated by his wealth and power. What Ryan didn't know was that Emma had hired Rebecca Johnson. The day of the final divorce hearing arrived. With the crisp clarity of a New York morning in October, just get this over with, he told his attorney. Emma sat across the courtroom wearing a simple black dress from her own collection, a piece that had been featured on the cover of Sustainable Fashion Monthly. Judge Patricia Williams entered the courtroom with the gravity of someone who'd seen every possible permutation of human greed and betrayal. Mr. Mitchell, she said, looking up from her documents. Ryan nodded smugly. Even after everything, he was still convinced he was the winner in this scenario. And Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Williams continued, turning to Emma, do you have any assets or financial claims to declare before we proceed with the property division? The courtroom fell silent. Emma slowly stood, her movement graceful and deliberate. She reached into her leather portfolio and pulled out a thick manila folder that looked like it could contain a novel. Judge Williams opened the folder and began reading, her eyebrows raised, then raised again. Mrs. Mitchell, she said. her voice carrying a note of surprise that made the entire courtroom lean forward. She paused, double-checking the numbers as if she couldn't believe what she was reading. A company with current assets valued at $47.3 million, with projected earnings that could reach $75 million within 18 months, the courtroom erupted. Ryan's mouth fell open. His attorney dropped his pen. Furthermore, Judge Williams continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. The documentation shows that Mrs. Mitchell has built this company entirely independently, using no marital assets. He stared at Emma like she was a complete stranger. Aurora? That's you? He whispered. She had her dignity intact, her empire thriving, and something Ryan had lost years ago without even realizing it. Her sense of self-worth. It has already received offers from major investment firms, valuing the company at up to $100 million. Ryan's world collapsed. Emma turned to look at him for the first time that day. Her eyes held no anger, no bitterness, no need for revenge. Is focus on building something meaningful while the world underestimates you, Emma was quoted as saying. Zipping up her suitcase for a flight to Paris Fashion Week, her assistant knocked and entered with a smile. I spent years trying to be someone else's definition of perfect. Now I'm just trying to be myself. And it turns out that's more than enough. Just calm. Unshakable truth. It always was, she said softly. You just never bothered to ask what I was doing while you were sleeping. This came for you, she said, holding up the same Forbes issue, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had finally found her voice. For 8 years, Emma had been right beside him, cooking his meals, hosting his parties, managing his social calendar, being his perfect wife. But he had never once asked about her dreams, her ambitions, her inner life. Drop your thoughts about Emma's journey in the comments below. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button. Hit subscribe for more ultimate justice stories. Remember, the best revenge is a life so amazing that your haters become your biggest fans. He absently picked up a magazine from the coffee table and froze. He had never cared about what she did during the day while he was at work. He had never even noticed that she was building something extraordinary. The words hit Ryan like a physical blow. What Emma walked out of that courthouse with was worth more than any financial settlement. 6 months later, Ryan was sitting in a generic office building in Midtown, waiting for a meeting with potential investors who were already an hour late. The headline, The Silent Storm, How Emma Thompson Built a Fashion Empire While Everyone Was Looking the Other Way, or on the cover of Forbes, was Emma, radiant in one of her own designs. Ryan's hands shook as he read the article. It revealed that Aurora Sustainable Fashion had just completed a $50 million Series A funding round, making Emma's company valued at $150 million. She was expanding internationally, launching a beauty line, starting a foundation to support women entrepreneurs. I learned that the most powerful thing you can do. Meanwhile, Emma stood in her corner office overlooking the Hudson River. The car is ready, Miss Thompson. Emma glanced at the cover and smiled, not with pride or vindication. Have you ever been called dead weight by someone who had no idea what you were capable of?